Hello, my name is Cariata Diallo, and I want to talk about why Rome was not a democracy. Below, you will see the definition of a democracy: a system of government in which state power is vested in the people or the general population of a state. Keep that in your mind. Let's start with Polybius' argument. He thinks that Rome was a democracy, despite giving us the first two reasons as to why other people would describe it as a despotism or an aristocracy. The three elements of the Roman constitution, or the government, according to Polybius, is as follows: the consuls, which can show Rome to be a despotism, a form of government where a ruler holds absolute power; the Senate, which strengthens the aristocracy idea because power is held by nobility. But then he describes the assemblies, where he gives an exaggerated role of the assemblies to hold all of the legislative power or make or replace laws. But is Polybius credible? He greatly admired the Romans because he was a Greek historian, but his admiration maybe have blinded his ability to see the overall holes in his perspective of the Roman quote-unquote democracy. Miller's argument also supports that Rome was a democracy. He points out the fact that universal male suffrage, which means that every man in Rome, free or not, rich or poor, could vote and are a part of an assembly. This is why he repealed the idea of Rome being a top-down system. He broke down the roles of the assemblies. So there are two assemblies: the tribal assembly, which usually passed the laws, and the century assembly, who voted on elected officials and had more wealthy members. So now we see that even the assemblies were separate and had their own avenues of what they generally voted on, but their roles were to vote on laws and candidates to run in the government. But Miller's main point to tie Rome together as a democracy was the voting on laws and majority rules on those laws that are passed or denied, and voting for elected officials. Ward now dives deep into the actual reality of assemblies, which, according to Polybius, back when we were talking in slide 2, is what makes Rome a democracy. Voter disenfranchisement was a huge problem in Rome because some of the rules that surrounded voting included all of the voting had to happen in Rome. So when the borders expanded of the Roman Empire, only rich people that could afford to come the long way to the capital could vote. How many people weren't able to make it due to work, family, or no means to get there? Next, only urban Romans were the majority of voters because they were in Rome, they were in the city center. So what part of the population was not able to be truly represented? Ward writes in his passage, quote unquote, Ramsay MacCullin, which is a historian, persuasively argues that only 2% of Roman citizens usually voted, which makes any notion of direct democracy nugatory, which means useless. So if most of the population could not have a voice in the assemblies, is that a democracy or something else? Polybius and Ward are on two different sides of this democracy spectrum. I would say that Ward is a realist. He looked through the rose-colored lenses. He took them off. He understood that there are limitations to what's going on. While Polybius was optimistic, he really admired the Roman Empire. In my opinion, Rome was not a democracy. Assemblies did not have as much power as the consuls or the Senate because, yes, they could vote on laws, but the Senate had power of which laws were proposed and which candidates were able to run for office. So assemblies did not come up with laws or choose the actual candidates to run for the government position so then they could vote. They voted on whatever the higher government gave to them. Kind of like what we do with our democracy. Voter disenfranchisement means that the majority population had no say in the legislation or any part of this democracy. Overall, there are some democratic themes, like being able to vote on laws that you didn't create or people that you didn't select to run anyways, and everyone in the higher government was rich and their rich friends dominated the votes. But overall, I believe that Rome was more aristocratic or even oligarchical. Thank you. You have a nice one.